What's up, everybody? It's the Bucky Brooks Show. I'm Bucky Brooks, your host, and we talk about all things football on this podcast. And I'm really excited because as we get near the end of the offseason programs, we wrap it up with a mandatory set of minicamp practices that allows us to talk about all things that are going on with all 32 teams. Today, we're going to talk about 4 different subjects, things that are really buzzing in the scouting community. So let's start right now with a tale of 2 holdouts. As we talked about it's mandatory minicamp time. And so that means that everyone on your team is expected to show up. If you don't show up to these minicamp practices, you're subject to fines. It is interesting in the AFC North, 2 of the best pass rushers in the league have decided to stay away. TJ Watt and Trey Hendrickson are in the final years of deals, and they are looking for hefty contracts. And the reason why they're looking for big contract extensions is because Myles Garrett just set the bar. And look, he just put it at a new level. Myles Garrett signed a 4-year, $160 million extension. Obviously, that makes an average of $40 million annually. And 2 of the best pass rushers in the league want a little bit of that coin. And because Myles Garrett is 30, they both deserve, or both feel like they deserve, to get paid. Here's why it's tricky, though. It's tricky because we're talking about 2 different players for 2 organizations, and both organizations operate with different philosophies. So let's talk about TJ Watt first. TJ Watt is a former Defensive Player of the Year. He's a 4-time All-Pro player. He has 108 career sacks. In fact, he has 5.5 more sacks. He has maybe 3.5 more sacks than Myles Garrett. So that tells you right there, look, he is worthy of being in consideration of the kind of money that Myles Garrett commands. We talk about the pedigree, we talk about the accolades, whatever it is that you want to look at on his resume, he can go toe for toe, tit for tat with Myles Garrett. When you think about the Pittsburgh Steelers, even though Aaron Rodgers has come over to the Pittsburgh Steelers to be QB1, the Steelers have always been and will always be a franchise that is really kind of reflected by their defense, meaning the defense is the identity that we think about when we think about Pittsburgh. Part of that goes back to the steel curtain in the 1970s, and the organization has remained true to that premise. When the Steelers are good, it's because their defense is dominant, and their defense has been good of late because of TJ Watt. TJ Watt is what we call a splash play specialist, meaning he makes all the big plays, sacks, forced fumbles, tackles for loss, you name it, creating turnovers is his game. And because of that, he is arguably the most impactful player on their team, which makes him the most important player of the team. We can talk about Aaron Rodgers coming over, making upwards to $19.5 million. It pales in comparison to the money that you have to pay TJ Watt for the job that he does. TJ Watt, in the last year of his deal, making $28 million a year. TJ Watt obviously wants to be paid closer to what Myles Garrett is paid because you can say that their resumes are the same. Well, if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, no matter how I slice it, I got to pay TJ Watt. TJ Watt is a homegrown product. We drafted him in the first round. He has exceeded all expectations. We gave him a contract extension, 4-year, $112 million, because we believed that he would be the dominant player. He has continued to be that dominant player. We want to reward him for his efforts because we are a franchise that believes the defense is who we are. The defense sets the tone. It's the identity. So to me, the TJ Watt thing is just about finding the right number, finding the right guarantees and all of that to make sure that TJ Watt continues to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. In Cincinnati, it's a little different because Trey Hendrickson, and look, I'm not saying that Trey Hendrickson isn't the dude. Trey Hendrickson is their best defensive player. Trey Hendrickson has been he's been an all-out baller since he's arrived as a free agent from New Orleans. He's coming off a year in which he led the league in sacks with 17.5. Everything that Trey Hendrickson has done on the field is worthy of being paid and being broke off in a major way. The problem is he's with an organization that has already cast their lot with the offense. This is a team that views itself as an offensive-centric team. They want to make sure that Joe Burrow has all the weapons that he needs to be the player that he has been for this team. First, they had signed Joe Burrow to a big contract. Then they signed his pass catchers, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, to blockbuster deals to ensure that offensively they can light up the scoreboard. When you pay the wide receivers, both of them, and you pay the quarterback, the franchise guy, man, the money gets a little thin and it gets a little tight when we start thinking about who else we want to pay. And I will say this, the Cincinnati Bengals have dropped the bag when it comes to the way that they take care of their marquee players. They should have had all of these deals done well in advance so that from a cost effectiveness standpoint, they are able to kind of make the budget sheet correct. But because they've waited and because they, in theory, had to overpay for T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, now they're trying to hold firm on what Trey Hendrickson wants. Trey Hendrickson wants a long-term deal. I would think that long-term deal is anywhere from 4 to 5 years. The Cincinnati Bengals want a short-term deal, which could be 2 to 3 years. It may not make a huge difference on paper, but it does matter when it comes to the financial security, and it also matters when it comes to the amount of signing bonus that the Cincinnati Bengals will pay. Because the deal is shorter, probably less money up front, less guarantees, less security for Trey Hendrickson, which is why he's been very vocal about saying, hey, I'm not going for this. You're going to have to pay me what I'm worth. And I understand it. Trey Hendrickson has made $16 million annually on his contract. He is not in a position where, look, his compensation matches his production. If Myles Garrett is making $40 million annually, Trey Hendrickson can't be stuck at a 16 number. He has to come up closer to Myles Garrett. Now, would I say that he deserves Myles Garrett money? No, but it can't be too far off given, look, the number of double-digit sack seasons he's produced since he's been at Cincinnati, the fact that he is a sack champion, particularly last year when he voiced his displeasure about his contract leading into the year, then doubled down and made it where you can't dispute the production. The Cincinnati Bengals are in a dilemma. And they're also in a dilemma because their best pass rusher is sitting out and their first-round pick, Shamar Stewart, is sitting out because of the language and the offset in his contract don't measure up to what other guys have gotten around the league. To me, the Cincinnati Bengals have messed this up, and they're really stuck because they misplayed their hand when it came to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. They're at a spot where they can't really pay Trey Hendrickson what he's worth. It's going to continue to get messy in Cincinnati. And I would say of the two situations, TJ Watt gets his money well before Trey Hendrickson gets his. I would even expect the Cincinnati Bengals to hold so firm that they may play this out where they dare Trey Hendrickson to hold out heading into the regular season because all of the language in the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, is in the favor of the team. Look for the Cincinnati Bengals to take it all the way out, to play this all the way out to see if they can force Trey Hendrickson's hand and then try and slide him to a deal that doesn't quite represent his value, what his value should be on the market based on the production that he's put up as a 4-time Pro Bowler and a sack leader. Kirk Cousins, your $100 million backup quarterback. That's right. Kirk Cousins, perennial Pro Bowler, the guy that was signed to the Atlanta Falcons to be the franchise quarterback, is now relegated to being the backup quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. While we speculated all offseason that Kirk Cousins was going to be moved, he was going to have a chance to go play somewhere, potentially in Cleveland with Kevin Stefanski. Maybe he'll bounce around and go to Pittsburgh. Kirk Cousins is still in the ATL. And Kirk Cousins shows up at minicamp knowing that he, at best, is QB2 for the Atlanta Falcons. Here's the thing. As much as we expect the Atlanta Falcons to move on from Kirk Cousins, given the prohibitive number that he is owed as a, big money quarterback, I think Kirk Cousins might be there because the Falcons don't have many options. When we look at it, let's talk about the contract first. Kirk Cousins is due $27.5 million. Regardless of whether he plays in Atlanta or not, that money is guaranteed. He is going to get that money. 2026, the Falcons owe him another $10 million guaranteed on a bonus. So no matter what happens to Kirk Cousins, whether he's in Atlanta or somewhere else, the Atlanta Falcons owe him $37.5 million off the rip. That is crazy, but that was due to the contract they gave him because they saw him as a viable starter and they didn't know if they would get their quarterback in the draft last year. So the dollar is spent. The problem with Kirk Cousins is the money that he is owed, the money that he is due, what he's going to make annually does not match up with the Kirk Cousins that we saw in Atlanta. Last year, we talked about Kirk Cousins throwing for over 3,500 yards, but he had 18 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. In fact, in the last 5 games that he played, 1 touchdown, 9 interceptions. Not high quality play from a guy that was coming back off of an Achilles rupture. And he was so bad that, look, you just had to take the ball out of his hand and give it to the rookie, Michael Penix, even though you kind of wanted him to redshirt last year. Well, once you made that move and you made Michael Penix the starter, the clock was ticking down on the Kirk Cousins era in Atlanta in terms of if he was going to be on the roster. The problem is everyone knows that you have to get rid of him because of the number that I talked about, $27.5 million plus the $10 million bonus. Everyone knows that you're on the hook for almost $40 million for Kirk Cousins, regardless of whether you want him. So when it comes time to trade, you're not going to get fair value for a quarterback who could be a starting quarterback in the league. Thus, the Atlanta Falcons are left with 3 options. First option is to take Kirk Cousins to training camp and wait for a quarterback to get injured. We saw it years ago with the Philadelphia Eagles. They had drafted Carson Wentz, but they had Sam Bradford on the roster. Sam Bradford was expected to be the starter, but then you drafted Carson Wentz, and now you have a situation where you have an injury. Boom, Sam Bradford goes to the Minnesota Vikings. They're able to recoup first-round pick, and away they go, and they kind of find a way to continue to play without Sam Bradford, and they lose their contract. So that's an option. The other option is to wait into preseason. All of these young quarterbacks, these fringe quarterbacks that are playing around the league, maybe, just maybe, a team sees their young quarterback play early in the preseason, and they just realize that their young quarterback isn't going to be ready. So they say, hey, let's go get a veteran quarterback, maybe as a short-term stopgap to help us get over the hump. For instance, imagine a team like the New Orleans Saints who are playing with Tyler Shutt, Jake Hayner, and then they have Spencer Rattler. Maybe none of those quarterbacks stand out, and you're like, hey, we have a chance to really be better than what it appears based on our preseason performance. Maybe we make a play for Kirk Cousins. So that's a scenario that the Atlanta Falcons could be waiting on to make a trade due to an underachieving quarterback and for a team that is desperate to get over the top. The third option, and the option that might be most likely, Kirk Cousins has to stay in Atlanta, and he has to be the insurance policy to Michael Penix. Remember, Michael Penix has suffered 3 season-ending injuries during his time in college, and maybe, just maybe, it's sensible for the Atlanta Falcons to keep Kirk Cousins on the roster to protect against an unfortunate injury to Michael Penix if it happened during the regular season. That is a likely scenario. When you're Raheem Morris and you're looking at this, it might be uncomfortable having a veteran who assumed that he would be the starting quarterback suddenly become a prominent backup. But if you're Atlanta Falcons and you know that the money that you owe him is going to be paid regardless of whether he's on your roster or not, you might as well just sit and wait, see what happens in training camp, and worst case, go into the regular season knowing that Kirk Cousins is a solid backup for Michael Penix. So if anything happens to your franchise quarterback, you got another quarterback who can win, who has proven that he can win the league. And even though he's coming off a disappointing season, he's good enough to keep the ship afloat if things happen. Let's see how that plays out. Let's go to New England, because there was a lot of intrigue in New England on what was going to happen when Stefon Diggs showed up. There's a bit of a dilemma with Stefon Diggs because the New England Patriots signed Stefon Diggs to be the veteran receiver to really stabilize their offense with a young quarterback, Drake May, entering his second season. What you love about Stefon Diggs is Stefon Diggs has played this role before. He played it in Buffalo with Josh Allen. Josh Allen being a young, upcoming quarterback and someone who was looking for some stability on the outside to help him elevate his game. Well, Stefon Diggs is traded for, like they trade for him. They bring him over. He has 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Look, Pro Bowl performer, lights it up. he is terrific as the number one option in Buffalo. In fact, he's so terrific that what you saw was a rapid ascension, a rapid development of Josh Allen as a player, as a franchise quarterback. You saw him grow right in front of his eye, right in front of our eyes, because Stefon Diggs was so good in so many different ways. Precise route runner, dependable pass catcher, a guy who was a dog when it comes to the ultimate competitor on the edge. He has all those things. And what that did is that gave Josh Allen comfort that no matter what, I always could find Stefon Diggs in the perimeter, and I know that I can throw it his way because he will make it happen. Now, Stefon Diggs, not the easiest to get along with at times, might have a prickly personality that you have to manage as a coach, as a front office, but what he does between the lines is so good for young quarterbacks that you're willing to deal with that because the return on investment is exactly what you want. The New England Patriots bought into that because after Diggs went to Houston and was very productive in Houston prior to an ACL injury, they still needed someone that they could depend on the perimeter to help Drake May take his game up a notch. Well, Stefon Diggs was signed to do that. Like, the expectation when he recovers from his ACL, he's going to be the number one receiver that the Patriots have been lacking the last couple of years. He also is going to be a positive influence on the guys around him in the wide receiver room because he is a hard worker. He does do all those things that you love to see. Come early, stay late, put in extra, work on his craft daily so he can set the example for the young players. The dilemma comes in a few weekends ago. Stefon Diggs is away from the facility. He's hanging out, doing his thing on his own time. He's on a boat. Him, his lady, Cardi B, a few other young ladies, and there's video that circulates of Stefon Diggs with a Ziploc bag and a pink substance in it, which we don't know, but there's been some speculation about it. And so you just wonder what Stefon Diggs into. Mike Vrabel now has to answer questions about Stefon Diggs and that stuff. The franchise has to kind of take on some water because of Stefon Diggs' actions. Not saying that he did anything wrong. It just creates questions. And we always talk about in the National Football League, we do not want distractions. We want everyone focused, locked, and loaded on the main thing. And the main thing is making sure that we position our team the best that we can to eventually compete at a championship level. The little scuttlebutt that has existed on the internet has kind of taken away from that. Here's where it even gets trickier when it comes to the New England Patriots. Because of all the things that I talked about in terms of how Stefon Diggs elevated Josh Allen's game, because of what Stefon Diggs has done when he's been around the team and showed up, the way that the chemistry and connection is between him and Drake May already, you don't want to pull the plug on the experiment. You want to see how this is going to elevate your young quarterback, but you don't like seeing the embarrassment or dealing with the embarrassment and the distraction that's being created. The solution that's likely to happen, hey, man, football's going to go dark for about 6 weeks. So what you have to do if you're the New England Patriots, bite the bullet, deal with some of the controversy that's going on, but also know over the next 6 weeks, by the time we get to training camp, no one is really going to remember anything that took place on the boat. But what you have to do is you have to tell Stefon, hey, man, Stefon, make good decisions away from the facility. Let's make sure, Stefon, you and everyone on this team, let's make sure we don't create another distraction that detracts from what we have going in New England. I think after that lecture, after that conversation that Mike Vrabel certainly had with Diggs, I don't expect to see or hear much more from Stefon Diggs when it comes to the things that happen away from the facility. Look for him to be the ultimate and the consummate professional. Look for him to be the number one receiver that they want. And look for the Patriots to be much better than anyone imagined when it comes to this team doing exactly what we expect them to do in Drake May's second year. Bo Melton is making the switch from wide receiver to DB for the Green Bay Packers. There's been a lot of conversation about this move. Bo Melton, a former 7th-round pick from the Seattle Seahawks, who has become quite the special team standout for the Green Bay Packers. Well, the problem that you have if you're Bo Melton, you look around the wide receiver room and it is absolutely loaded because the Green Bay Packers did something that they normally don't do. They take Matthew Golden in the first round. They come back and take another wide receiver in the third round, Savion Williams. And now you're trying to figure out, man, there are only so many seats in this room when we're playing musical chairs. How can I survive in this room when I don't know if I'm gonna get a fair shake at really making the roster? I'm really good on special teams. Maybe there's another path for me to not only make the team, but to extend my career. Man, Bo Melton's in the perfect situation in Green Bay because the Green Bay Packers are doing something that they've always done since Ron Wolf was the general manager for the team. Ron Wolf, if you don't know, Hall of Fame executive who spent time with the Oakland Raiders under the late Al Davis, is doing something that the late Al Davis used to always do with the Raiders. Al Davis would always take talented athletes, speedsters, and he would find a way to put them on the field. If that meant changing their position, he would do it. So Al Davis would always take these athletic guys who were running backs and wide receivers, and if they couldn't make it on offense, he would flip them around and ask them to play defense. At the time, the Raiders were a heavy bump and run team, a man-to-man team, Lester Hayes and Mike Haynes and all those guys. And so it was an easier conversion to take super talented athletes, put them on defense. The great Willie Brown would work with them to learn how to play bump and run. And now you have an explosive athlete contributing to your defense. Ron Wolf saw that, learned from that, and started implementing that practice with the Green Bay Packers. First player that he did it with was a guy named Corey Harris, who was a running back at Vanderbilt. He converted him from a running back and made him a cornerback. Corey Harris played in Green Bay, but then went on to play 10 plus years in the league as a defensive back for the Packers, the Ravens, and other teams. Ron Wolf also did that with yours truly. I was a second round pick with the Buffalo Bills at a wide receiver, return kicks, make my way to Green Bay. They had me come for a workout. I run around, run fast, didn't catch the ball particularly well. And he posed a question to me. Would you consider playing defensive back? At the time, I was like, man, I haven't really played defense since high school, but if it's an opportunity for me to make a roster, yeah, I would consider it. The wise old man, Ron Wolf, also told me, hey, at your size at the time, 6 foot, 190 pounds at the workout, I ran 4.37. He was like, man, your size, your arm, your speed, it could be a path for you to play longer in the league. So I had success doing that, end up playing almost 6 years in the league, most of that time as a defensive back because the Green Bay Packers made the switch. They did it with me. They did it with a guy named Keith Crawford. They've done it with other people in their program. Now, I say all this because the Green Bay Packers asking Bo Melton to move, that is something that has always been a part of the franchise's DNA. They've always wanted, since Ron Wolf was there, athletes with size, speed, great special teams, prowess, and toughness. They always want to give those guys a chance to make their roster in some capacity. They have a scout in the building, Sam Seal, who played for the Raiders and made the similar conversion for Al Davis, where he was a running back. They played cornerback and played for the league maybe 8-9 years. Sam Seal is still in the building. So when Bo Melton is asked to make this move, this is not a move that was a fly-by-night move. This was a move with Brian Gutekunst, who worked at the knee of Ron Wolf, Sam Seal, and others, had the conversation about whether Bo Melton could be the next guy to make the conversion. The reason why he could be the next guy to successfully make the conversion is, let's look at his DNA and what he's done. He's 5'11", 189 pounds. Bo Melton at the combine ran 4.34 coming out of Rutgers. So when you see the size, you see the speed, that right there gives him a chance to be able to do it. In 2 years with the Green Bay Packers, Bo Melton has become one of their better special teams standouts. Last year, Bo Melton played 154 snaps on special teams. Bo Melton's younger brother, Max Melton, plays for the Arizona Cardinals. So he already has someone who knows how to play the position. So those phone calls, those sibling phone calls, when we're talking about technique and those things, man, Bo Melton has a chance. But here's why it also has a chance to make it work. Because he's so good on special teams coach Rich Bisaccia can really vouch for him to make the roster as a special team standout while he, Bo Melton, is working to learn the position. To me, this conversion is not just a conversion for this year. You really won't see the fruits of his labor until 2026. The trick for it being successful is Bo Melton has to show enough promise as a defensive back in preseason while securing a spot as a special teamer to buy himself enough time to be good enough to eventually become a contributor in sub packages. Maybe not as a nickel, but as a dime or a bandit defender that somehow gets on the field when they go 6 and 7 DBs. If he is able to show enough promise with his size, his speed, and his special teams prowess, Bo Melton would be the next conversion to work out successfully for the Green Bay Packers. I love the move. I'm wishing him well. I've seen it work, and I'm hoping it works for him because we always want someone to be able to extend their career. But keep an eye on Bo Melton in Green Bay, trying to do something that we don't see done often. Go from offense to defense and playing at a high level for a team that has championship aspirations. So that's the Bucky Brooks Show for today. Make sure you continue to rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Be sure to check out all my colleagues and all the cool things that we're doing at Bleav. Man, we're trying to make this the best place to go to get your sports info. Make sure you keep coming back to the Bucky Brooks Show for your content. We got some cool things brewing. And as we get into training camp and the regular season, this is going to be the spot to get all your latest analysis. Until next time, I'm Bucky Brooks. Talk to you soon.